Good morning everyone, thanks for checking out the video. My name's Andy, I'm a solutions consultant at Acuity. Today we're going to have a shortish video just to talk about and introduce Sage Intacct. So Sage Intacct is a cloud-based financial management solution, and what that means is when we want to log into that system, we do that through a web browser. I'll be using Google Chrome today, but I could also be using other platforms such as Firefox, Edge, and if you are Mac users, we could also be using Safari as well. So if I just hover over here for a second, I'm going to log into the system using just a standard Intacct authentication, but if I wanted additional security, I could also adopt single sign-on and have two-factor authentication and things like that as well. I'm going to begin by talking about how the system is structured from an entity perspective. The system is structured using something called multi-entity accounting structures. So what that means is that we can have many entities configured in a single environment in the system. So if we just take a look at what's on the screen here, this is an organizational view of the way that my particular system is set up. So if I just go and highlight this purple box here, this is what's known as the top level, and it means that I can report and view things across all of the entities. The green boxes are my individual entities. These can be set up with different base currencies, so if I wanted to report in local currency for my US companies, for example, I'm able to do so. And the blue boxes at the bottom are individual locations against that entity. So these could be financial locations, or they could be physical stock locations. But the point I'm trying to make here really is that if I wanted to report at this level, or this level, I'm able to do so from within the system. The multi-entity accounting structure also comes with other kind of benefits that you'd expect. If I perform intercompany transactions between my entities, I can do these and create one side without having to log in and out of different systems to go and create the opposite side of that transaction. We can share data, we can share setup. So if, for example, we have a single customer that we trade with across all of these entities, I can have a single customer record which I can then trade with regardless of which entity I'm working within. And naturally, that comes with the reporting capabilities so that I can see real time across my group what's actually happening as transactions are being processed through the system. So I just mentioned a second ago intercompany transactions, so let's just go and have a quick look at one example of how you might perform an intercompany transaction within the system. What we're going to do here is we're going to place a journal into the system. So if I use one of my journal codes, I will give it some descriptions and say my source entity is my UK trading entity. From here, what I can do is I can go and enter the journal information. So I can enter the location, maybe a department. I can say this is for a marketing charge that we want to apportion across different entities. And I can then say, have another leg here for a different entity, again for our marketing account, and put that as a debit. And we're going to apply that to our accrued expense account. So you can see here I have a journal which has three transactions against it, three legs, and you can see that journal balances. So I have two £100 and one £200 debit and credits balance. But actually this doesn't balance across entities. I have two legs going to this entity and one leg going to that as well. So what happens in the system when I go and post this transaction is the system recognizes that this is an intercompany transaction, and it will go and post the additional legs. So if we just go and have a look at the result of that very quickly. The system's gone, so here's my example that we just put through the system. When I posted that, the system's automatically gone and created the inter-entity postings to balance that journal in its entirety. It's not something you would have to do yourselves. And the way that the system actually does this is through a mapping table that you set up. So if I just quickly look at this, I can see all of the different mappings of different GL codes that then the system uses to go and go and post transactions from an inter-entity perspective. Whilst I've used a real basic example there of just a journal, this can also be utilised in other areas of the system as well. So for example, if one entity pays something on behalf of another through their bank account, the system will automatically go and produce that same kind of balancing transaction without you having to think about it yourselves. So that's how the system is structured from an entity perspective. Let's go and have a look at more of a financial view of the system. The system operates on something called dimensions and dimension structures. What that means is that we're able to go and tag transactions with things that are relevant to us as a business. So if, for example, I take this purchase invoice, and if I go and enter a supplier against that invoice and just put in some of the default information there, what that means is I might create an invoice for some office supplies in this example and say it's for £100. But what I'm also able to do with the use of dimensions is go and tag relevant information to this transaction. So I can say it's for this entity, it's for this department, it might be for a specific sector or project, for example. And if I just drop down this list, you can see a whole list of other dimensions that are available here. Some of these dimensions will be populated by virtue of what we're doing. So the supplier dimension here has been populated because we're entering an invoice against the supplier. There are a number of these that come as standard with the system. Some of them you will use, others you may not. And for those that you don't use, you are able to repurpose these. So for example, channel, if I wanted to go and rename that something else and have a dimension that's applicable to me and my business, and then I can use that for analysis purposes, I'm able to do so. If you do, however, use all of them, you can add additional dimensions to the system as well. Okay, so whilst I am creating an invoice and it's for office supplies, this account here, and it's for £100, I'm actually also analysing this transaction across many different things, so by location, by department, by project, by supplier. And what that actually means is that when I come to run reports within the system, it's very quick and very easy for me to be able to do so. Okay. So let's just have a quick look at that. So if I come into here and just look at one of my standard dashboards within the system, this is a controller dashboard. There are many others that are available. I'm going to talk about some of the components on this dashboard, and then we'll talk about how we can then start to expand and report using the power of the dimensions that we just looked at a second ago. So firstly, we have KPIs across the top. So these KPIs are things that are important to me as a user. So I want to see things like general expenses as a high level figure. I can do that. I can have some images there as well. I can view this by year-to-date comparison or quarter or month-to-date. So you can set these things up to suit you guys as business users. But if I wanted to drill into that, it's very easy for me to get to underlying data. So I can then see a report here that I can then drill into a bit further. And if I keep drilling down, I can get to the underlying transactions that make up the specific figures in our reports. Next, we have this more traditional style report. So this is rows and columns, and it's a profit and loss report that we're looking at. And if I just go a bit further down, we can have stuff like graphics as well. So charts, graphs, and that kind of stuff that we can all add onto a dashboard to give us the kind of reporting capabilities that we would like. I'm going to focus on this P&L though, just to come back to the point I was making, which was about dimensions. Let's suppose that we have a scenario where we want to drill into this P&L in more detail. In other systems, it might be that you have to run this P&L many times and by different criteria, pull it out into Excel and then perform VLOOKUPs and concatenations and other things to get you the end result that you want. Okay? With Intacct, you don't necessarily have to do that. So what do I mean? Well, if I take subscription revenue here and have a look at that figure, and I might think actually that figure looks a little bit high, and then just go a bit further down and say, actually we're looking at the payroll figures and they look relatively high as well. We might want to break out subscription revenue and say, actually, I want to view the products that make up that figure, and we might want to view our payroll by department. Well, within Intacct, that's very easy to do. You could edit the report itself, or you can edit from directly within a dashboard. So if I come into this screen here, what I'm actually looking at is our financial report writer, and if I just drop into the rows of this particular report, I can come to here and I can get to my subscription revenue line. I can choose to expand that line by a dimension. So I said I wanted to view the products. If I go and expand that by items and just OK that, and then just scroll down a little bit, and I wanted to expand payroll by the department dimension. So within about 3 or 4 clicks, and then I can preview from directly within here, what I'm able to do is have a report that now shows me subscription revenue by the items that we've sold. And if I scroll down a little bit, I can then see the payroll and related expenses by department as well. Any report in the system can be printed. Printed in the system means PDF. It could be sent to Excel, and it can also be emailed to people. You can do other things such as scheduling these as well. So if you wanted to always send a certain report or group of reports to users on a specific day, you can do that as well. So let's talk about consolidation for a few moments. If you're a business that has a requirement to consolidate your accounts and create consolidated financial statements, the likelihood is that you're doing this either by pulling everything out into Excel and then concatenating things, or you're using some kind of reporting tool. Sage Intacct has its own consolidation engine inbuilt into the product. So what this actually means is that we can have the system configured in such a way that it actually goes and creates the calculations and necessary transactions to perform consolidation for you. Okay. So if I come in to have a look at this, it starts with something called a consolidation book or consolidation books. What this means is I can set up different consolidation sets within my system that do different things. So for example here I have a global consolidation of everything into US dollars. I also have a consolidation book for a global consolidation of everything into GBP, and then I have a subset consolidation of US and Canada into US dollars. I could set up as many of these books as I need within my system to consolidate into many different currencies and have subset consolidations if I wanted to. So let's go ahead and have a look at one of the books and how we set this up. So we can come into here and we can give it some default information like a name and a description, but then we can start to do things like choose how we want to value our balance sheet and our income statement accounts. These can be things like by ending spot rate or weighted average in the example I have here. Then we choose the currency we want to consolidate into, and this again could be any currency. It doesn't have to be in sterling like in my example here. From there we can go ahead and choose which entities we want to consolidate and include as part of our consolidation, and then we can allocate an elimination entity. And the elimination entity is where all of the adjustments and things will be posted when the consolidation routine is run. We've mentioned dimensions a few moments ago. So you can choose to include or exclude, or consolidate or not rather, different dimensions across our group. So for example, if I wanted to consolidate all of our projects across all of these entities to give me a consolidated view, I'm able to do so. Okay. I can then do things like choose which accounts I want to eliminate from the consolidation. So these here you can see are my intercompany accounts that I'm choosing to exclude from this consolidation routine. But these could be other things as well, goodwill on an acquisition or something like that, or anything else that you would want to exclude from a consolidations, you could do that as well here. So once we've created our book and defined the rules associated to that, what we actually do from here is then we're in a position where we can go and run the consolidation. So if I just pop back to our process map for consolidations, all I do when I want to run this consolidation is go ahead up here, I choose the book I want to consolidate, and then actually I just go and tick the period that I want to consolidate. I could choose to do this now. I can set these up on a schedule so they will run automatically without me having to do it manually. And when I'm happy with that, I go ahead and choose consolidate. I'm then presented with ending spot rates and weighted averages. Incidentally, these can be auto-calculated. So the system has something called an Intacct daily rate. So on any given date, the system will go ahead and it will go and pick the rate by pushing out to a website called awanda.com and to pull back in what the current exchange rate is. So I can go and choose to consolidate now. I won't do this for the purpose of the video, but if once I've consolidated my ran the consolidation routine rather, what I'm also able to do then is start to see the reports that are generated off the back of it. So if I just come into here quickly and go to our consolidations report, it enables me to start viewing things like this. So here what we're looking at is a dashboard of consolidated financial statements. So you can see across the top here, I have my balance sheet and I have all of my different account groups. And then to the right of that, I have each of my individual entities that I included on my consolidation. And you can see across here, we have an eliminations entity as well. If I just scroll down to this line here, I can see a value within there. And if I wanted to go and drill into that to work out what that was, we can see it's intercompany transactions here. And you can see the different values that are associated to that. And again, like I did earlier, I can go and drill into these figures to get to the underlying transaction so that I can see what was also eliminated from my consolidation process. So let's go and talk about something a little bit different for a few minutes, and what we're actually going to talk about is workflow and approvals. To illustrate this, we're going to use the purchasing module, not that we're restricted just to this module for this kind of process. So let's have a look at that. So what we're looking at here is the process map for the purchasing module. What I want to focus on is the tasks area, and we're going to focus in on the different transaction types that you can see across here. So we have requisitions, purchase orders, receipts, and purchase invoices. So every system has this concept of being able to create and manage these types of transactions, but where Intacct is a little bit different is that it will allow you to create workflow that says, actually, I want to create a requisition and go immediately to an invoice, or maybe you don't do requisitions, you create purchase orders, you might receive them, then create the invoice, or alternatively, you might want to create a PO and then just have it create an invoice. So the system's very flexible in regards to this. Okay, you can create as many of these different transaction types as you like. So by way of example, if you were in a multi-entity environment, and you had different countries or different companies operating a different structure, you'd be able to set up different workflow rules to be able to handle that. So having set up our workflow structures, what we're then able to do is apply approval policies to those structures. So if we just come into here and have a quick look at the settings, and just scroll down a little bit, you can see this section here for approvals, and we have some more general kind of settings here. So do we want to enable this function or not? Do we require a supplier or not? If it's a requisition, you might not want to apply a supplier at that point, but if it's an invoice, we would absolutely need that record. What happens if something's been modified, a transaction has been modified once it's already been approved? Does it need to go back through the approval process or not? We can generate emails, so people can be emailed notifications of when something's there for them to approve, or alternatively when something's been approved by someone else. And then we have delegation options as well. But if we just go and have a look at the actual approval policies, you can see I have 3 set up in my system here. So these are the different transaction types that I talked about a few seconds ago. And if I just go into edit one of them, so we'll edit the PO. What you can do within here is you can set up different types of rules. So my system at the minute is set up that all spend goes to this particular user, but it could be based on values, it could be based on departments, it could be based on employee manager, and a whole load of other things as well. And you can actually stack these if you wanted to. So if I just go and take value approval, just by way of example, I can say here that anyone with level 1 approval security, they can value anything from 0 to 1,000, and one person must approve it. Level 2, 1,000 to 5,000, but actually we're saying 2 people must approve that. So you can get quite flexible with this. It can be quite basic if you don't really have a structure in place, and it can be modified quite easily to suit businesses as you change and grow. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a look at this. If I come to here, I'll keep the example very straightforward so we can see some of the emails and things, and we'll just say that Emma is the person who's going to approve all spend on purchase orders. Okay, so if I just open up a new tab here, and actually I'm going to log in as a different user. And if we just give the system a few seconds to load. So now we can go ahead and create a purchase order. So if I just come into the list here and go and select our purchase order option, let's use an example that I've used earlier. So let's go and create an order for some stationery, and let's give some details to this, and we'll say it's for the office supplies account, it's for this entity, and it's for £100. From here we can go ahead and we can save this as a draft. So if I was creating a large purchase order and I wanted to come back to this at a later time, I could save it in draft mode. But for the purposes of this, let's just go ahead and submit our purchase order. So once we've submitted it, we're back on our purchase order list here, and you can see this transaction here is the purchase order we've just created, and you can see here it has a submitted status. So what happens next? Well, depending on how you set up the workflow and the approval policies attached to that, someone could get an email. So in our example, Emma is going to receive an email, and if I just go and show how this works, what I've got here actually it's just a test mailbox, so these represent different people within our organisation. So if I come and have a look at this, you can see that there's an email here for Emma telling her that there's a purchase order that needs to be approved, what date it was, who it's for, and things like that. You could, if you wanted to, drill directly from the hyperlink to be able to go and approve that. But if I wanted to just do this as Emma, so just come back to here and just go to the Emma's tab, there's options within the system to be able to approve things. And incidentally, there are mobile views and other ways of being able to approve things outside of the system. So into purchasing, go to the approved transactions list, and here you'll see a list of all the different types of transaction that need to be approved by this user. You can see here's our purchase order at the top here. We can choose to view that. We can approve or decline it directly from here. If we wanted to multi-select, we could do that as well. But for the purposes of this, we're just going to approve it. And once this purchase order has been approved, it can then follow and be pushed through the rest of the workflow process. So what will happen here is Carla will then receive an email to tell her that this transaction has been approved. So if we just quickly go and look at this and have a look at her mailbox, you'll see that there's an email in here saying your transaction has been approved, and this would allow her then to process it through the system. If we just pop back into the system and go to Carla and go to this list view, if I just refresh this, what you'll be able to notice now is that because this has been approved, we're able to now process this through the system. So what we choose to do and how we choose the workflow to work is through this convert button here. I can click convert, and I can choose based on the way that I have the system set up to either create a fulfillment, a group purchase order, or an invoice in this instance, if I wanted to. But actually before that, what you might want to do is email this to your supplier. So the system has the capability to be able to email out documentation, and if I just go and type in an email address here, and had I set up the supplier with an email address, it would have automatically filled this in. And if I just do this and say it is from me, what happens is the system will then go and kick off a process whereby it will go and send that purchase order to our supplier. So let's have a look at that. So if we just come up here, it was sent via to Emma in this example. Here we can see an email. What we actually have here is a document attached to that, so we can see this is just a sample layout of a purchase order. Naturally, these can be modified and can have your own stationery and be formatted however you would like them to. So we do have the ability to attach a physical invoice to that, and these email templates that we're looking at here are also completely configurable. So mine's very basic in terms of what it says here, but it could be a bit more personalized if you wanted it to be. So back to our system. If we just come back into Intacct, and as I mentioned a second ago, from here we can go and convert this purchase order to another document type. So in this example, if I just pick vendor invoice, go straight from a purchase order to an invoice, what actually happens within the system is that it will pull forward all of the details of the purchase order onto the invoice. If we wanted to go and change any of the information or details, we could. But if we just go and post this invoice, what's nice about Intacct when you look at this is it has a full audit history against transaction records. So you can see here against this invoice, we can say who it was created by and when it was modified. We have links back to the documents that it was converted from. So it gives you a real nice audit trail of what it is that you're doing within the systems. I think I mentioned earlier actually that a workflow could be applied in different areas of the system. So if you wanted to apply similar rules to what I've just talked about in the order entry module, you could do so. And approvals actually exist across many areas of the system. So from approving journal entries, purchasing, which we've looked at, and invoicing, through to timesheets and expenses as well, which we won't be covering today. But that functionality and flexibility is there should you need it. I'm not going to cover off the quote to cash process in much detail in this session because it's actually quite similar to what I've just described with regards to purchasing. So what we're looking at here is the process map for order entry, and you can see here we have very similar options available that we looked at within purchasing, albeit we're now looking at sales quotes, which we convert to sales orders, which we can then fulfill orders, which we can then create sales invoices, and as per the purchasing module which I described, we can decide to do all of these things or just some of these things depending on how we want the system configured in our system. And finally, just to finish up, Sage Intacct offers the ability to streamline your bank reconciliation and cash reconciliation processes. It does this through the use of something called bank feeds, which is relatively common these days with finance systems. But if I just come into here and if I come in and look at our NatWest account, what you'll be able to see here is that what I can actually do is connect to this Sage Banking Cloud option here. And what this does is it allows me then to connect my my bank account directly to Sage Intacct, and you can see my status is connected here. What this enables me to do when I come to the reconciliation process here is as soon as I come into here and I start to enter my information for my reconciliation, so in this instance I'll pick my NatWest bank account, it doesn't have to be NatWest obviously, I pick some criteria here, and as soon as I hit continue, this spinning icon there, what that's actually doing is it's going out, it's connecting to my bank account, and it's going to pull in all of the transactions that are in the bank that have yet to be synchronized to Intacct. So if we look at the reconciliation screen here, what you can see is you can see the number of Intacct transactions that are unmatched with the value. We can see the number of transactions and the value that are unmatched at the bank. And what I didn't really cover off there was the ability to see what's been matched and what can be automatically matched. So what happens in the system and what you can do is you can set up these applied rule sets just here. Once I do this, what this enables me to do is start to have different criteria that allow me to tell the system to match based on certain rule sets. So if I look at this particular rule set that I have set up, this is matching on document reference and the amount. So this is the field on the bank transaction and the fields within Intacct as well.
You can obviously change this and naturally change this if you wanted to. Perhaps dates might be more applicable to you rather than references, but you can tailor this yourselves. What this actually does in terms of, if I could just pop back to this very quickly, is when I'm looking at my reconciliation screen here, I can filter it and do different things. And if I filter on the match transactions, this is the bank account, so there's my tab for the bank account. And if I go and flick to my Intacct tab here and view the match transactions, you'll see that I have two transactions that the system's automatically matched based upon amounts and, in my example, references as well. Naturally, if I had a fully working system, which was to a live bank account and a live Intacct system, then I'd be able to get a broader variation of results. And for the transactions that aren't matched automatically for one reason or another, I do have the ability to manually match using this option here. And just finally, if I wanted to go and create transactions, so perhaps you've got something that comes through the bank which is not yet an Intacct, bank charges usually a relevant one here, you can create directly from within the screen, which does aid in speeding up the cash reconciliation process. So really that's it from me today from a financial overview perspective. There are more advanced modules that come with the product, so if you're businesses that operate projects, or you maybe have contracts or that kind of thing, you maybe have integration requirements and with other solutions, Sage Intacct can deal with and handle, and we can facilitate that